Hey everybody, it's the Epistemologist here today. Long time break as we seem to have quite a bit of things, but also, we have been kind of enthralled by the news, been enthralled by what's been going on and the craziness of COVID and all those things. So it has been a wild time, but now we are going to talk about a topic that we've been thinking about stewing over for the last 6 months or whatever it's been since you last heard from us, and that is about the Golden Age philosophy.
Yeah, Trump had a tweet, I'm trying to find it, where he mentioned the Golden Age. His sort of make America great again thing. It's not just America.
Yes.
But he's just doing that for the campaign.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, there's been so much, that's clear, because there's been so much across the greater globe that has been, the Iran deal, the Iran Middle East stuff, the North Korean Asian stuff. Though that whole thing across the world we've been seeing major benefits just by Trump being the leader of the United States and taking a role that asserts American authority, and through that is able to achieve great amounts of prosperity and peace, because Trump understands that when you trade, you get the most benefit, rather than warring or trying to steal assets or anything like that. Trade brings the most wealth to everyone involved, more than war does. War might benefit a few small proxy people, and I think we can all say, we know what we're talking about with the wars in Iraq and those sorts of oil deals and Bush-era politics, where we'd get into a war and we'd be paying for all this war gear just for the, military to have this stuff that, did they really need to pay, for 20 Tomahawk missiles at $1 million a pop? Seems like a lot of money. And I'm not saying necessarily that it's wrong to have a strong military, but I think it's wrong to have a strong military and also use it for the personal gain of these companies that, have supplies for that military.
Yeah, it's just common for the global establishment to have these businesses that are very unseemly. They're doing all of the trafficking and the weapons sales and all these unseemly things.
Businesses in bed with the government for the sake of getting rich off the government is a very establishment sort of thing to do. It is unpatriotic, it's un-American, and it is what currently the news is about. Hunter Biden was getting rich off of an American government sort of position his father had, and trading influence for massive amounts of money.
Right.
That is classic. Classic.
Well, I don't even think it's the biggest story here. It was a sort of an event that started all of this media uproar. I think the bigger story is what the media are doing to suppress it. They don't want this content shared.
I'm
doing that.
I actually started a solo video just saying that exactly. But yeah, the media suppression of the Hunter Biden story is actually a bigger deal than the Hunter Biden story itself, only because the fact that we can't get that information, that we are being suppressed or trying to be shoved away from understanding what is going on with a presidential nominee of a major political party, is beyond the pale. It is
shocking. It is shockingly something seriously wrong.
I would call it treasonous. I would call it treasonous.
Yeah. It's way beyond un-American.
It is.
Yeah, it is un-American. But the thing is we've got certain values that protect us against this kind of criminality.
And I would also say, in addition to this, I believe the two fundamental rights of American politics are the First and Second Amendment, and I would say that the most important is probably the Second Amendment, because it ensures that the First Amendment will never be overridden. But we are getting dangerously close to the place where the politicians have done nothing to remedy the fact that the First Amendment is just being trampled on by corporations that have actual government insurances against them being attacked by lawsuits.
Yeah, I found that quote, or that tweet that Trump put out. He said, we will beat the virus soon and go on to the golden age better than ever before. And
Right.
he capitalized golden age. And he capitalized virus as well. I see the virus as the society, this global establishment, the parasite, the great parasite of the state.
Yes.
Specifically the planet. The planet is sort of being run by a monolithic state. He's calling it the virus here.
Well, a series of back channels and protections against being prosecuted. It is impossible, and this is exactly what happened in Ukraine, right? Which is a prosecutor started actually trying to dig into the one of the big establishment, deep state, or whatever you want to call them, the virus, if you want to call them that. Started to dig into the virus and started to try to prosecute the virus. And what happened? Well, the virus got the biggest part of it, the American establishment political machine, to come down on Ukraine, the country, to have it fire an attorney for the fact that they just wanted to prosecute wrongdoing in their own country. And not only that, but we have video evidence of Joe Biden literally bragging about the fact that he got this attorney fired.
Yeah.
But this video is about the golden age. This video is about after that. This video is about the golden age philosophy that is coming almost because of what has been happening, what has been transpiring. And I think
it's been going on for a very long time.
Yeah,
and we actually are steeped in it. We're saturated in their culture, so we understand it way better than the golden age. What's coming? We understand that philosophy, the philosophy of what I call empire.
Right.
We understand that so much more, and we don't understand an aspect of it. We think of it as though that's the way humanity is.
It's hard for us even to comprehend what that new philosophy will be, but we have some small insights into how that will change. For instance, we're pretty sure that the foundations of free speech and the foundation of free speech will be defended by an open source technology, or what we're saying is the decentralization of speech will cause it to be impossible to censor. We have an inkling of that, but what happened because of Twitter, Facebook, and all these large social media corporations, Google, large social media corporations, they shut down free speech by directing it. So we had in the early days of the internet, we had sort of a decentralized model, but the formulation of that computer scientists and networkers made with HTTP, the protocol, made it relatively easy to capture. Meaning, you didn't own your own data, you didn't own your own stuff, you had to host it on a server, and that server, while you could own that server, ultimately, eventually, hosting your own server became too much of a hassle compared to having, say, Amazon host your content for you through another site like Twitter. So having your content hosted via another site became a big and obvious advantage over hosting your own stuff. right? Hosting
you could host your own stuff, but it's not as convenient as having someone else do it. And they took advantage of that situation to centralize data. They wanted to control all of the data moving in and out. So, and
you can argue it's still not centralized, but it's a de facto centralization. They control most of the conversation. Most of the conversation are housed under these four, big tech companies: Facebook, Twitter, Google, and I think Amazon. You could argue, but that gets a little weird because that's via EC2 or their own servers, right? So they have servers, and they haven't done much censorship with that because that'd be extremely hard for them to accomplish, to determine what is on that actual site, and then I don't know, that would be pretty intense.
Yeah, they actually don't have as much control as maybe we might imply, but they miss a lot of things, but they try.
Well, they miss a lot of things, but the problem is that there's not enough of those things that they miss to make up for the fact that they control the large portion that they control.
Yeah.
Having Twitter shut down over the last day or so was impactful because no one could talk, and we had to figure out the alternatives that we wanted to use. Gab AI, Parler, Minds, right? All of the alternative sites that were there, but they don't represent a majority market share. They're probably, 1 or 2% of the market share of conversations or social media interactions that go along. They're so small and insignificant. They're ready to fill in the gap if a gap should ever be created, but they're not quite there yet. And really, we expect that the nature of social media will change significantly to a decentralized service, and what that means is you have you host essentially part of the content that you see. And I've been thinking about this for a little bit because I've been seeing some small little things in my circle about this. If you host part of the data that you see, that means that other people around you will be able to get connected to you faster. It will and faster than what's called a CDN. You wouldn't have to go out to a server all the way halfway across the state. You go to somebody's house, and if you have a fast enough internet connection, no one will notice, and it will just happen. And on top of it, you can drive down the costs that YouTube has. YouTube has a lot of overhead because they have to host so much video and stream it. The servers for that are incredibly expensive. And if you can reduce that cost by creating a distributed platform, it is far more cost effective.
Yeah, we've not had a tremendous amount of resources be invested in the distributed option, that alternative, because all these big corporate companies put it all into centralizing.
Yep.
So the tools that we have for the centralizing thing are far more sophisticated.
Well, and I think what will happen
need to be like.
I think what will happen is you will have your there will be still this, if you want to host things, right? So I'm imagining there will be a centralized company because that tends to be convenient. However, the content that company serves won't be able to be censored because the content might be more distributed than Twitter or Facebook or Google. Meaning that content is saved on your computer automatically. And then it is spit across a thing, so when you add something to that, even if the company wants to restrict it, other sources, say your machine, might be able to talk and still give the message, even if the company wants to censor it.
Yeah.
And that would be a distributed system. And the benefits for the company for doing this, there are financial benefits in that you have less overhead than a server. Than having to host all of the content all the time for everyone. You host the content all the time, but that's only the first couple of things, or some of the things, you have much smaller servers that you need to maintain and manage.
I'd like to point out that decentralizing things is a very American thing.
Yeah.
It's a very, very American thing because, like I said before, American values are created because of this war that's been going on against the global establishment.
Yes.
For centuries and centuries and centuries.
Part of the reason they had the Second Amendment was to decentralize the ability to defend the nation.
Right. Yeah. That's why we were so powerful.
Yeah.
We get a lot of our power from the people because we've empowered each and every one of them. We treat them all as equal, which is a very non-empire thing to do. The empire likes to create slave populations. It's a big enslavement racket. So, but the American way is the opposite of that. It empowers everyone.
It is what makes us unique and special and different from the world.
And it's what's going to lead us into the golden age.
Exactly right. China almost coincidentally represents everything that is opposite of that. China, its main thesis is that collectivism run by a centralized government is the best way forward. So that the individuals, they're just part of the collective, and yeah, the government takes care of them, but ultimately it is the government and the government officials in charge that make the final decisions, that do the final thing. They are the ones that are the big bosses, right?
Yeah. All of the push to censor things really comes down to the they're trying to create a centralized discernment. They want to be the ones to discern for you what to think.
That's why, and
the American way is the decentralized version where everyone gets to decide.
And the media has pushed extremely hard to be that arbiter of truth. They want to say that they're not, or they're just following the articles or wherever the things lead. But that's not true at all. They want to be the arbiters of truth, because if they're the arbiters of truth, not only do they get to be, respected and powerful, but also they get to sell the fact that they're the arbiters of truth to the empire, who needs an arbiter of truth to validate their existence.
And so the empire is really, if you just trace the lines of leverage that are trying to centralize control, is trying to centralize the ability to cause things to happen. That's you're tracing the shape of the empire if you do that. So you're finding all of the points of this centralized control, and that's where your components of the empire are.
Exactly.
You can see that in all kinds of different things. And like I said, we're coming out of this dark age, this bigger dark age, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And it's been all we know. All we know is empire. And so the epistemologist part of this channel is what we want to do is introduce a new philosophy moving forward. It's not technically a new philosophy. It's not even technically our philosophy. But
I think it's more we want to introduce the a perspective that we don't see elsewhere, which is that there is a philosophical and epistemological way of looking at how these things are happening, what's going on with our own lens, and we want to contribute that because we don't see it really anywhere else.
Yeah, it's hard to find it. Yeah. You get pieces of it, but the whole worldview is not. I mean, it's nice to have the whole worldview give context for what we're seeing. So we try to do that.
Yes, and it's nice to try. It's nice to try to, as a practice for us, it's nice to try to explain to an invisible audience what's going on. I've listened to our old videos, and I still like to listen to them from time to time. I know it's kind of narcissistic, but still,
Maybe more nostalgic. Hopefully.
Well, I would claim it's nostalgic. I'm sure that there are others who would claim it's narcissistic, but I still find it's fun to review and look over and see what I was actually thinking at the time. And I think that it's important to recognize that our philosophy and what we're saying will change over time, because we will understand more and we will have different views on how things are going on. I think at the start of our channel, I was even more libertarian or small government focused than I was now. The understanding the ideas and the need for regulation and its interplay between the economy and capitalism is an important thing to understand. That's very nuanced. There's not a lot of people who go for nuance in any of the media that I watch, even ones that are trying to accomplish it. It's still a lot of fear mongering, and so
the nuance is where you're going to get more a more honest take on what's actually happening. You get that when we're trying to model anything. If you're actually trying to model what's really happening, you're going to get something that looks richly nuanced.
And varied, and it's interesting to see. For the last couple of years, there has been a lot more emphasis on more complex stories, which is really interesting. And I think that's indicative of a change in the way that even, Hollywood, a change in the way everyone perceives the world as a far more
capacity for grasping complexity.
Yeah.
Getting better.
It's not that the complexity didn't happen in World War I or II or the great old days, right? Mm-hmm. It's that the complexity was hidden, and there was a feeling that the normal population, the normal populace, wouldn't quite understand what was going on.
Which is another kind of elitism.
Yes.
They should be allowed to make up their own mind, no matter what, even if it's wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's just sort of elitist to think that you can.
I want to challenge that a little bit, because there was also definitely the public itself had a feeling that it shouldn't be complex, right? There wasn't a desire by the public to know more than what was right in front of them. I can make that case.
Back then they felt like they could trust their experts to tell them.
Right. They could trust their experts, and the experts came up with some explanation, and they didn't question it. Right? And I'm saying that the elites took advantage of that, of course, but there's also there's also this thing where I'm pretty sure that if the scientists or whoever the experts were to go into nuance, people wouldn't necessarily look into it much further than the simple explanation, and they'd probably prefer the less nuanced explanation. Saying, "Why are you being so complex? Why are you being so nuanced? I don't want any part of that. The simple explanation is obviously the better one."
Sure. I don't see that as a challenge. I definitely agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think back then, a lot of people didn't need to. They're not accustomed to it. They didn't, everything was built to be simple, so that people could use them.
Right.
And that's actually a good thing. You want that when you're trying to build something, you want it to be easy to use.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily saying that the people were stupid or wrong, or necessarily wrong in anything other than their misunderstanding of the importance of knowing the nuance of what's going on. Because there's a high abstraction way of talking. Essentially, the simple way of talking about something, the Hunter Biden fiasco was bad. Right? That's a pretty simple statement. It's true, but it misses a lot of the nuance. that way of talking about something is good to get a point across. But the nuanced way of talking about something explores the complexities of the situation in a way that is important for people to understand what's really going on. And so, yeah, I think that's a good stopping point. I guess the Golden Age philosophy understands nuance. It brings about a desire for distribution and decentralization, and it has a positive effect in the sense that we will be looking forward into having open sort of distribution and understanding of things, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Well, I think we'll close it off there. It was fantastic talking to you all. We were the Epistemologers. See ya again.